Viewpoint is made possible by the generous financial support from the Greenlight Fund. For more information, call 305-424-4191. Hello, I'm Henry Mack, and welcome to this month's Viewpoint. In recent months, the eyes of the world have been focused on the religion of Islam, particularly the immigration of Muslim refugees and the perceived threats that may accompany them, thanks to terrorist groups such as ISIS. But have fears of terrorism morphed into a war on American Muslims and Muslims in general? Pope Francis recently preached about the fostering of interreligious dialogue and collaboration, suggesting it is the only way to fight religious fundamentalism. So joining me to discuss the value of interreligious dialogue and the perceptions of the Islamic faith, we welcome Shaikh Shafayat Mohamed, Emir and Principal at Darul Uloom Institute and Islamic Training Center. Karen Shah, Vice President of Programs for the Broward Interfaith Council. Karen is a Muslim convert. Rabbi Jaime Klein Aklepi from Bet Breira, Samu-El Olom. And Daniel Alvarez, Director of Florida International University's Muslim World Studies Center Initiative. Dan also teaches religious studies at FIU. So a contentious sort of conversation, of late at least, and it's sort of regretful or disappointing maybe that we're at this point, no thanks to the political climate and certain comments that have been made about Muslims. Some of which, according to some, may be justified. For the most part, many people think not. Right, and Pope Francis in Africa recently said, quote, "Christians and Muslims are brothers and sisters, and we must therefore consider ourselves and conduct ourselves as such. Christians and Muslims and members of the traditional religions have lived together in peace for many years. The many acts of solidarity which Christians and Muslims have shown with regard to their fellow citizens of other religious confessions must not be ignored," end quote. And while, yes, the history of religion has been one of great solidarity and peace, it has also been marked by a great many wars and unrest. Rabbi, how exactly does religious dialogue and conversations cultivate peace, as the Pope is suggesting? And how do we go about doing that? And is that not really going to bring about change?
Well, I think that interreligious dialogue among religious leaders is still very important, because once the leadership can sit down and understand each other and accept the varied faiths and views and values and find the shared values, then that leadership's responsibility is to continue to speak and to teach to the members of their faith. The leaders can get along beautifully and find commonalities, but unless that can be transmitted to the population, we're still going to have
Some
a problem.
on the right argue that there's no commonality to be found within the Islamic faith, at least with respect to Christians and Jews and the American ethos and the American philosophy. So entering in dialogue with Islamic representatives is sort of a moot point, since they're so opposed philosophically to the American values.
The core values of the monotheistic religions, they're the same, aren't they? You talk about brotherly love, you talk about fighting for justice, standing up for the weak, the oppressed, treating your neighbor as you would want to be treated, the golden rule, all these things, Judaism, Christianity and Islam have all those core values.
Then why on the right do many people say we have a Muslim problem?
Well, I think that
if that's true, if those values are really there, why do we have such an issue?
We need education in this country. We need media coverage of good things that are happening in the Muslim world. What do you think about media coverage, since you're with the media?
I mean, the media coverage of late, at least, of the political situation is rather negative. And that's sort of what drives ratings. And admittedly, that's part of the problem. And they're playing on the fears of the American populace. But where there's smoke, there's fire, right? I mean, not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims.
Let me give you two
That's
examples.
what they say.
Yeah,
No, that is not true. They are not all Muslims. Not all terrorists are not Muslims.
Let me give you two important examples here. One is happening right now in Wheaton College, Illinois. There's a Christian professor, a very devout Christian, who wore a jihad in solidarity with Muslims, given this whole anti-Muslim sentiment. She's right now in the process of being fired from Wheaton because she also said we worship the same God and quoted Pope Francis. That is very, very telling. In other words, the Christian college, resented the fact, not only that she wore the jihad, but that she said we worship the same God. The other example of this is one of my Orthodox Jewish students. I require my students to do a site visit. Where did he go? He went to a mosque. Why? Because the Rambam, Maimonides, says if you don't have a place to worship, go to a mosque because we worship the same God. It was very clear to that Israeli Jew that going to a mosque was totally illicit because Judaism recognizes that the God of Islam and the God of Christianity and Judaism is the same God. But I think we all agree that is not filtering down to the people. The level of ignorance that is now in the masses, particularly in the West and the United States, is absolutely appalling, and we need to correct that as soon as possible because we can only talk to each other here, and this is not getting down to the people. No good is going to come.
Yeah, Shaikh, what do you think? Sorry, I'll come back to you, Rabbi, in a second.
You know, I support the dialogue and interreligious conversations and dialogues, etc. But you know, I have been I've been brought up very diverse, multicultural, multi-faith, and I've reached a stage now where I think that dialogue is important and necessary, but we need to go beyond that. I think there is need for assimilation. Because once upon a time, in history, in Palestine, in Israel, and in those lands, the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims lived together. You did not have all these interfaith organizations and World Federation, peace in the world. Today we have all of that, and we don't have that love and that assimilation, which means that we're just talking a lot of talk. And I think that's what is happening in Interfaith. And I mean, I'm very much part of Interfaith, but I think people need to live together. You know, students study different religions, the professor knows that, but do they really assimilate and love each other and understand each other and work together? That's the level we need to get. And we will break down that hatred because it's not yes, education is there. It's in the universities, world religions, what Islam is, what Judaism is, what Christianity is. But why aren't people living together? Because we have deliberately put up a wall.
That's an interesting question. What does assimilation, though, look like in 21st century America when we are such a diverse population in a multicultural society? What are we assimilating into anymore? It seems like people are becoming more isolated as a result of...
And that's the problem. We are talking the religion, but we are becoming more isolated.
Because we lack identity. Like, the only identity people know is what they know. So why would we assimilate into? I don't know what the question is.
I think
but it's a fascinating point. I admit it. Yeah.
When we talk
Rabbi.
about assimilation, we're talking again about finding those common values of respect, and the idea that each human being has value, no matter how they express their relationship with God. The problem that we are talking about this morning regarding Muslims is the fact that there are people who don't represent a complete faith, and the world is seeing them as representing the faith. And I would believe that the best way to teach would be for other Muslims to say, you know what, that's not who we are. We are a broad, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multifaceted faith of God and love and doing the right thing, and that's what we don't hear enough of.
Yeah,
It
part
is
of the
being
problem,
said.
Part of the problem on the right, at least, is the frustration with respect to the lack of responsibility and ownership, I guess, the Muslim community has in the United States. We're not hearing from any of them, right?
We're not hearing it, but the words are being spoken and written and published, and it's there. It's just not being distributed via the media. Okay, every major Muslim organization in America has come out with a very specific document. All right, condemning all terrorist groups. All right, there is Google letter to Baghdadi. Hundreds of Muslim scholars around the world have come together and written a document, pages and pages. They've got about 25 points where they talk to the head of ISIS, telling him what you're doing is wrong and these are the reasons why.
Wow, yeah.
Quoting Quran
It's amazing
and
you
Hadith.
don't see that.
You don't see that.
You don't see that.
I have a copy of the document.
There.
Yes.
You have a copy. It's there. We are speaking up. I don't know what else you want us to do as Muslims. I'm American. I was born in this country. I chose Islam. I'm a convert. America is a crazy place right now.
Yeah.
It is, and it's disgusting because we're better than that.
Yeah. How scared are you personally, I suppose, with respect to the future of the American politic and the political system with what's being said?
Well, it is scary that our politicians who are running for president of this beautiful country can stand up and say the terrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
Not just against Muslims. Donald Trump started with the Mexicans.
Yeah.
Right? And so Muslims.
So, to play devil's advocate, though, their primary concern is the security of the nation. And if we have an Islamic radical terrorist issue, why not prudently ban all Muslim immigrants until we can figure out, quote, what the hell is going on, end quote, Donald Trump? Right? Isn't that not a prudential decision?
It's a terrorist issue
on his end?
with terrorist groups, not Muslims in general. And I still want to hold this point, as Karen
Can you say that one more time? I think we need to appreciate that.
It's terrorists with terrorist groups, not all Muslims.
Okay.
And that's why Muslims, even though we have a voice, and even though it's not really advertised, but it's there on the document, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and action speaks louder than voice. And I'm really into that move right now that Muslims need to take the initiative to do activities with other groups, other faiths, other people. When I mean, go feed the poor together. Don't just talk it. Live together. Do these community services, these social activities together. Not just a Muslim group going to do a charitable work, but it should be Muslims, Christians, Jews, the neighborhoods. When you work together, I think we'll kill all this negative talk.
Well said.
Let me tell you something. I know people associated with the Muslim World Studies Initiative. We're trying to develop a center to disseminate a more fair, correct picture of Islam that was getting in the media. At FIU, yes.
It's really lost in the academies. This is a completely different tangent.
But we're working with the community. We're working with Cosmos, an organization of Muslims here in Florida. We're working with people, and we're reaching out to the community. We want the community to come to FIU and FIU to go to the community. But one of the things that I wanted to add, if you think about the reaction of the Anti-Defamation League, of Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, of the American Jewish Committee, how immediately they condemned the remarks of Donald Trump, I think that speaks volume about the potential that we have, not only for interfaith dialogue, but for activity. The Jews immediately realized that the language that was being used, they've heard it in Germany in 1933, and they said, we're not going to allow our Muslim brothers and sisters to be singled out. We need to hear that kind of response from other Christians in the United States. The Jews have spoken very clearly, but Muslims, I agree, the Muslims need to speak up more clearly and retake Islam back from the narrative that has been imposed on Islam by the terrorists. And I think that is a battle within Islam that Muslims themselves have to lead in that fight.
Yeah, and something the American media has to help facilitate.
And
there is a moral responsibility within the media to do this.
Because there's such power.
And it's not the job for the outsiders. It is the job for an outsider to stand up and say what is morally correct and what is wrong. That is the job of the whole community, the whole country. But to do this self-reflection and the self-change, that can't really come from outside. It has to reinvigorate the Muslim people and teach what is the true faith, and that's what the dialogues do, and that's what really working together does. And
Sheikh, there is a battle. There is a battle for Islam, I would argue. And I think President al-Sisi of Egypt, even the former King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, have spoken very forcefully that Muslims need to retake Islam, because there is a battle within Islam, and that battle is being fought at the ideological level, and it cannot be overcome at the military level at all. You can defeat ISIS, but if you cannot approve that kind of interpretation of Islam that is absolutely harmful and destructive, not only to us in the West, but to the Muslims themselves, because more Muslims are being killed by ISIS than are Christians or anybody else for that matter. Unless that happens, then we're still going to have this problem for many generations.
Now, I want to share an example. I am originally from Trinidad. Trinidad is a very multicultural place. When Donald Trump make a statement against Muslims, he has and had hundreds of thousands of supporters on that point. But if the Muslims had been living together, and I want to blame myself and the Muslims for that, living together with the non-Muslim community, I mean not just working and going to school together and living in isolation, your neighborhood, your daily life, social life were really together, he would not have had the hundreds of thousands of supporters. They would have said, you are speaking garbage.
Yeah.
Because we lived a different life with Muslims.
No, Americans fear what we do not know,
But
right?
they don't.
And
you see in Trinidad, if a politician gets up and say Muslims are such and such as Donald Trump said, he will get no rating. Because the people live a different lifestyle. And I mean, I live in America, and I'm telling you, neighbors don't talk to each other, Muslims live by themselves, and you see, it's our home, and you need to correct your home first. I've been in Interfaith for many years, sir.
yeah.
But I see a lot of talk in the boards, and everybody's back to their own way, and they have that prejudice, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Yes. Karen, go ahead.
I'm going to disagree with you because I'm American. I'm an American Muslim, and I don't live that way. I do not keep myself.
But that's
home.
you, but not the majority.
But how? I don't know if you can say that.
But I'm
okay?
saying that. I mean, I lead a congregation of
All right.
3,000 people for my Eid congregation. If I have an interfaith program in my mosque, the least people that come are Muslims. I want to be real. You know that, Karen?
Wait, if you lead an interfaith dialogue in
If
your
I call an
mosque-
interfaith dialogue in the mosque, if I go to a church for an interfaith program, I have more non-Muslims
More
present
non-Muslims
than
than
Muslims.
Muslims, right.
And you know that, Karen. If we have an
But
interfaith
don't we need to
program,
reach out to non-Muslims?
that's what I'm saying. But our Muslims need to do that. We,
Muslims
the
need to
leaders,
know
alone
more
talking
about.
it, but the majority are not coming out. It's either they're scared, they're not educated.
Okay, so why are
have
they
that.
scared? So we've got fear and we have education as issues. All right, I'm an American. I've been told to go back to my country. This is my country. My kids are in college. My kids tell me it's not, and they don't have issues at school. My daughter wears hijab. The kids have questions. They answer questions and they talk about things, and the kids are good.
Yeah.
All right. All my friends, Muslim friends that work, they're dealing with non-Muslims, and they're sharing and educating and having dialogue one-on-one. I've been told that doesn't make a difference, but I think it does make a difference, that every Muslim should try to make a difference.
That's my point. The majority needs to wake up and assimilate.
Wait. Careful with the word assimilation. If you tell, this is the
that
big
word.
issue. Are you going to tell the Muslims they can wear a hijab? I've seen comments in the Miami Herald letters say they should be more American. Exactly what does that mean? Does it mean you shade your identity as a Muslim? I'm going to ask the Jews to start wearing the kippah
No, you
because
keep
you're
your
Jewish?
identity,
Come on, we cannot
but you do a lot of social work together.
Yeah.
You gotta work together. A Muslim needs to take that extra effort to tell his non-Muslim neighbor, hello, good morning, good afternoon, do some community
This is
thing.
precisely the point that we began with, that I was trying to ask. What does assimilation look like in 21st century America when we're living in such a plurality? What are we assimilating into, and to what extent do you need to shed your own identity in order to enculturate, right? What does that look like? How do they do that? How do we do that? How do Muslims do that? Especially given the fact that Muslims at least have a very particularized identity that they're not willing, understandably and rightly so, to let go of.
Well, Jews have a particular
Yeah, I think
identity. They're not. Everybody has a particular
I think
identity.
everybody
Do
but-
that then.
but-
I mean, again, we're talking very
Americans.
theoretical here, though.
Yeah,
but what does that look like?
And I would say that the ideas of this country, the ideologies of this country, particularly not only allow, but originally embrace the ideas that people could practice, can live the way they want to, with their own identities, with their own peculiar and particular faith, in a part of a greater culture. And the greater culture, it doesn't.
That's nice in theory,
it's not
Jamie,
paramount.
but I don't know what that looks like. I mean, you're talking about doing more social justice activities together. That's
my
one
point.
step. That's one step.
And I
But what
agree
else?
with that.
What else
Working
needs to
together.
happen?
Well, I agree that things are not filtering down to the level of the people. I mean, this is remaining at a very ethereal academic level. Intellectuals, preachers, imams, professors. Yeah, we can understand this language. The question is, how do we convey that language to the people? I agree with you, Imam, that we need more activities. But also we need more understanding. When you read the Quran and you read Surah 5, which is my favorite chapter of the Quran, where the Prophet says, God gave the Torah to the Jews, and God gave the gospel to the Christians, and to us He gave us Islam, and we should all work together for the benefit of humanity and let God decide the differences. That message, that view of Islam needs to get out, because Islam is intrinsically pluralistic. And most people don't know about that.
Islam is intrinsically pluralistic.
Yes, it is pluralistic.
I have not heard that.
Because most people don't read the Quran, and most people don't want to know about the religion. In fact, this is the problem. If you talk to a Salafi Muslim has debated with me and said, no, Alvarez, you're reading Islam the wrong way. I said, look, I'm reading your Quran. The Prophet says you can work together with all these communities and let God at the end of history decide differences. In other words, that is within Islam itself. And how do we know that? When the Prophet, peace be upon him, reached Medina, what did he do? He gave Jews civil rights. He gave Christians civil rights. Jews did not have civil rights in Europe until 1781 in Vienna. In other words, that knowledge of Islam is not filtering out to the masses. What do we hear? They want to impose Sharia on us. They don't know a damn thing about what Sharia means. They have no idea that there are different interpretations of Sharia, and there's no way to exclude Islam from compatibility with Jewish and Christian values. That is not getting out to the people. I agree.
You know, when you bring texts into the question, and we look at the text in varied ways. If you're going to be a fundamentalist reading of the text, you can read it fundamentally for good. You can find reading fundamentally things for bad. Muslim traditions also has a second-class citizen status for Christians and Jews, which has been enacted for protections and has been acted for less than good ideals as well. So we have to really go beyond the fundamentalism of the text and see where we are today. We're a world and we're a country with a multiplicity of faiths and beliefs, and everybody should respect their text and their story of faith.
Let me ask you
then
this.
move
But wait a
past
minute,
that.
Rabbi, I may interject. The people that are supporting Trump and Cruz and so forth are people who are also fundamentalists on the Christian side, who are saying the God of Islam is not the Christian God. It's not, you know what I'm trying to say? So we have a problem on both sides.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
We have a problem on both sides.
Whenever
Let me ask
anybody
you-
reads a
let me-
fundamental
Let me ask
text.
you this. It seems like religion itself has maybe exhausted its potential. Why not just privatize all religion? Let's keep everything to the private sector.
Religion is privatized. That's why we live here.
Let me try and rephrase what I'm asking. I guess, why involve religion at all in any sort of political conversation or dialogue or discussion of contemporary life? I can understand the Bill Mahers of the world, who want to sort of do away with all religion from the public sector altogether. Why not move towards that route and sort of dissolve all conversations? Let's just adopt a sort of pure philosophical morality.
That's a bigger
Ignore. And if we want to go to church on Sundays, we go to church on Sundays, and we just leave it at that.
That
right?
really is the ideal, that religion is an individual's private relationship with God and how one understands how God wants you to live in this world. And Muslims have one ways of doing it, Jews have another, Christians have another, Hindus have another, and lots of times there are intersections. But the reality is that we all live together, and people bring their beliefs into the workplace and into the schools and into the supermarket. And therefore, there has to be an acceptance that faith is private, but it does influence who we are and how we act in the world. So although legalistically it has to be separate, humanity has to accept and work with people of other faiths.
But if the reality is that faith is in every way a public affair, it can't be separated legally, right? And politically speaking, it can't be ignored. But a lot of people want it to be. I don't know what my question is, and I apologize to the
but you
viewers
phrased,
for
I
the-
think you
for the-
raised
for
an
the
important
poor-
question. I'll address it after the Imam.
I want to support Daniel on this point where the Quran said that there is need and the Quran supports community work. The Prophet, peace be upon him, one is the theory in the Quran, but in his life, he had formed an organization called Helf ul Fudul. That was not an organization established to help Muslims. It was an organization for community services, for problems and difficulties that even the infidels and whoever were having problems in those days, he was part of establishing that organization for community and the society. Had nothing to do with religion, had nothing to do with Islam. Exactly.
Right here in Florida, South Florida, there is a member of the board of the Muslim World Studies Center Initiative, Dr. Jaffer. He has a clinic, free for the poor people of South Florida, whether they be Christian, Muslim, or atheist, or whatever. People know about that doctor and what he's doing in the community? No, but I know about him because he's a member of our board. He contributes to the Muslim World Studies Initiative at FIU. That kind of works, the kind of work you're alluding to, Muslims are carrying out every day. Doctors are doing pro bono work to help the poor. That needs to be out there in the media and has to have more visibility. And I hold the media responsible for not highlighting that kind of activity that Muslims are doing every day.
I'm trying to give voice to the new atheists out there, right? And why not buy into their narrative that religion, again, has exhausted its good? And we should move to a post-religious society, a post-religious world, a post-believing world. Indeed, as Nietzsche says, God is dead. It's useless now to believe in religion or any sort of religious tenet or faith. In fact, it causes more harm than good, as evidenced by this conversation and the reason why we're having this conversation.
That's if you believe that Muslim terrorists are really representative of God's word. And we here reject that.
Absolutely.
So we do not feel that it is God. God is not the cause of terrorism, no matter who interprets God, no matter who's doing the terrorist act.
On that note, we have to end it. So thank you so much. We're out of time for today's program. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us. Handshake across the table for another episode of Viewpoint, Sunday, February 7th and 21st at 12:30 p.m. right here on WPBT2. Don't forget to like us on Facebook with Viewpoint with Henry Mack and post your comments on today's program. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm Henry Mack. Thanks for watching. Viewpoint is made possible by the generous financial support from the Greenlight Fund. For more information, call 305-424-4191.